You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. By September 23rd, the Korean People's Army was on the back foot, pulling back from the Osan perimeter. The United States 8th Army, equipped with armor and vehicles, was poised to charge forward. General Walton Walker, the leader of the 8th Army, ordered a major offensive on September 22nd. He noted that the enemy's resistance was crumbling, which allowed his forces to launch a comprehensive attack. The plan was to penetrate deep into enemy territory, exploit their weaknesses, and encircle them to cut off their retreat and annihilate them. The strategy included a broad assault. The United States 1st Corps would push along the major route from Daegu to Suwon, aiming to connect with the 10th Corps, which was advancing from Inchon. The United States 2nd Infantry Division was tasked with an ambitious attack along a specified route. The 25th Infantry Division was to capture Chinju and prepare for further orders, and the South Korean Army was to obliterate the enemy forces in their area through deep encirculating moves. A critical part of the orders was that commanders could advance as needed without worrying about the security of their flanks. By the afternoon of September 23rd, operational commands were reassigned to better organize the massive offensive. As part of the preparations, the 8th Army moved its headquarters from Osan to Daegu. At this stage, United Nations forces near the Osan perimeter totaled almost 160,000 troops, with over 76,000 in the 8th Army and about 75,000 with the South Korean forces. Reinforcements were arriving, including the Philippine 10th Infantry Battalion Combat Team on September 19th and the 65th Regimental Combat Team and personnel from the Swedish Red Cross Field Hospital soon after. Additionally, the Far East Command made logistical adjustments to better support the ongoing effort. During a meeting on September 23rd, Coulter, while talking to Walker at the 25th Division Command Post, proposed a shift in the division's attack plan. Instead of moving southwest, he suggested they head west and northwest to synchronize better with the 2nd Division situated to their north. Walker gave Coulter the green light to adjust the division's orientation within the 9th Corps, provided the Corps' boundaries remained unchanged. This primarily affected the 27th Infantry Regiment, which had to switch from the southern to the northern side of the 25th Division. To facilitate this move, General William B. Keane of the 25th Division put together a special unit led by Captain Charles J. Torman of the 25th Reconnaissance Company. On the evening of September 23rd, this team, called Task Force Torman, navigated past the 27th Infantry via the southern coastal road at Paedunni, making their way to Cheongamni, where the regiment was set to reposition. Their mission was crucial: establish control over the Nam River and push forward through Wiryong to reach Chinju. By the morning of September 24th, Task Force Torman was advancing along the coastal road towards Chinju, eventually clashing with about 200 North Korean soldiers near Sachon, dispersing them with ease. By that evening, they had taken strategic high ground just south of Chinju. The next day saw one of the tanks hitting a mine, injuring Torman severely, necessitating his evacuation. Meanwhile, the Korean People's Army 6th Division was causing delays for the 35th Infantry Regiment at the Chinju Pass until the evening of September 23rd. The following day, the 35th Regiment reinforced its position at the pass. That night, a patrol discovered the Nam River Bridge at Chinju was destroyed by Korean People's Army demolitions, making it impassable. This prompted the 35th Infantry to plan a river crossing downstream from the bridge. In a covert operation at 2 a.m. on September 25th, the 2nd Battalion crossed the Nam River southeast of Chinju and successfully took control of the city with the aid of tank fire from Task Force Torman across the river. Approximately 300 Korean People's Army troops attempted to delay the takeover with mortar and artillery fire. Later that afternoon, the 3rd and 1st Battalions made their crossing, and Task Force Torman followed that evening via a sandbag ford crafted by the 65th Engineer Combat Battalion. The engineers managed to fix the highway bridge overnight, allowing vehicles to cross by noon on September 26th. Farther downstream, close to the destroyed bridges near Wiryong, over 1,000 Korean refugees alongside engineer troops spent September 25th building a sandbag ford across the Nam River, despite sporadic mortar fire from Korean People's Army forces, which were eventually silenced by the 8th Field Artillery Battalion. Before the break of dawn on September 26th, the 1st Battalion of the 27th Infantry made their crossing. Advancing towards Wiryong, they secured the town by noon after confronting Korean People's Army resistance. With minimal opposition, the regiment proceeded towards Chinju, taking control by September 28. On September 24th, the 8th Army changed its earlier plan and instructed 9th Corps to start a major offensive aiming to capture Cheonju and Kangyong. To execute this directive, Major General William B. Keane orchestrated the operation using two primary forces, each supported by tanks and centered around the 24th and 35th Infantry Regiments. These forces were led by Task Force Matthews, previously known as Task Force Torman, and Task Force Dolvin, both setting out from Chinju. Task Force Matthews was assigned to advance west toward Hadong, then head northwest through several locations, finally reaching Kunsan along the Kum River estuary. Parallel to this, Task Force Dolvin was to travel north from Chinju to Hamyang, swing west to Namwon, and continue northwest to their targets at Cheonju, Iri, and Kangyong by the Kum River. However, 3 destroyed bridges west of Chinju held back Task Force Matthews, delaying their departure to September 27, 10 a.m. Led by Captain Charles M. Matthews with the 79th Tank Battalion's Company A and the 25th Reconnaissance Company, they moved out. Following behind was Task Force Blair, centered around the 24th Infantry's 3rd Battalion. By 5:30 p.m., Matthews had arrived in Hadong, with the mission evolving into a race to free U.S. prisoners reportedly moved just ahead by the North Koreans. In Hadong, news came that some prisoners were merely half an hour ahead. Advancing under moonlight towards Courier, the team found and rescued 11 American prisoners from the 3rd Battalion of the 29th Infantry Regiment near the village of Kamdu. The next day, near Namwon, the leading vehicles of the task force got stuck in a river crossing, halting the convoy. Meanwhile, Sergeant Raymond N. Reifers in the lead tank managed to enter Namwon, surprising numerous North Korean soldiers, distracted by attacking F-84 jets, who were yet unaware of the American ground forces' proximity. Reifers' unexpected arrival led to the liberation of 86 American prisoners. Task Force Matthews subsequently cleared Namwon of enemy forces and met up with Task Force Dolvin that afternoon. Task Force Matthews spent the night in Namwon, while Task Force Blair moved on to secure other locations, finally stopping at Iri due to a destroyed bridge. On September 30th, the port city of Kunsan was captured without opposition. Task Force Dolvin, alongside the 35th Infantry, paralleled Task Force Matthews' route, navigating around Chirisan, a challenging terrain of dense forests and high mountains, which served as a haven for communist operatives. As the North Korean People's Army retreated from southwest Korea, many stragglers and organized units, numbered up to a few hundred men, took refuge in Chirisan to continue guerrilla warfare. On the morning of September 26th, Task Force Dolvin left Chinju at 6 in the morning, heading northwest toward Hamyang, following the same route the Korean People's Army 6th Division had retreated along. This mixed force of tanks and infantry included key units like Alpha and Bravo companies from the 89th Medium Tank Battalion and Bravo and Charlie companies from the 35th Infantry. The group was organized into 2 teams, each combining an infantry company with a tank company. The infantrymen traveled on the tanks, guided by the tank company leaders. Just 3 miles outside Chinju, a leading M26 Pershing tank hit a mine, halting the column. While paused, engineers found and removed another 11 mines from the road. A little further, another mine damaged a second tank, and then a third minefield, defended by a Korean People's Army platoon, blocked their progress once more. After overcoming these obstacles and dispersing the enemy soldiers, the task force discovered numerous enemy resources abandoned in the area, including 6 anti-tank guns, 9 vehicles, and around 7 truckloads of ammunition. As evening approached, the Korean People's Army destroyed a bridge just 3 miles north of Hajeon-ni, just 30 minutes before the task force arrived. Overnight, the group built a detour around the destroyed bridge. The next morning, on September 27th, the lead tank hit another mine, and the unit came under attack from Korean People's Army forces positioned along nearby ridges. Despite initial setbacks, a combined effort with air support from 16 F-51 fighter bombers using various weapons allowed the task force to break through enemy lines. After overcoming yet another demolished bridge with a makeshift bypass, Task Force Dolvin linked up with the 23rd Infantry of the 2nd Division near Hamyang on the morning of the 28th. They spent 3 hours there constructing another detour around a destroyed bridge. Throughout their journey from Chinju, they encountered numerous mines and blown bridges, tactics used by the retreating Korean People's Army 6th Division to slow them down. Coming close to Hamyang, a liaison plane alerted them to Korean People's Army forces attempting to destroy a bridge within the town. Reacting quickly, the task force's lead tanks rushed to thwart the Korean People's Army troops attempting to demolish the bridge, securing it intact and foiling the enemy's plans. This victory accelerated their advance, allowing them to quickly confront and either kill, capture, or scatter Korean People's Army forces along the way. By mid-afternoon, they reached Namwon, joining forces already there. After refueling in Namwon, Task Force Dolvin pressed northward, reaching Cheonju the next morning, which was already under the control of elements from the 38th Infantry Regiment. They continued their advance through Airi to the Kum River. By 3 p.m. on September 30th, having completed its mission, Task Force Dolvin was disbanded. During its operation, it achieved significant results, including capturing or destroying enemy resources and combatants, although it also sustained losses, including 3 tanks and several wounded men. This journey took Task Force Dolvin across 138 miles from Chinju to the Kum River, marking a significant endeavor through southwest Korea. Following behind them, the 27th Regiment secured the area up to Namwon, enhancing security along the supply route. Concurrently, on September 29th, Republic of Korea Marines took Yosu on the southern coast, marking another advancement during this period. Across from the old Naktong Bulge, the Korean People's Army Divisions 9th, 4th, and 2nd started moving west. Specifically, the 4th Division made its way towards Hyeopcheon after leaving Sinbon-ni. The 9th Division also headed for Hyeopcheon, and the 2nd Division, after moving through Choge, joined them. It seems the 9th Division was the first to pass through Hyeopcheon before United States 2nd Infantry Division forces arrived at town. On September 23rd, the 2nd Infantry Division's 38th Infantry Regiment encountered strong resistance in the hills around Choge, but was eventually able to overcome Korean People's Army forces that were trying to delay their advance. The following day saw a coordinated effort as the 23rd Infantry Regiment from the southeast and the 38th from the northeast executed a pincer movement on Hapcheon. The 38th Regiment also set up a roadblock on the Chinju-Kumcheon Road out of Hyeopcheon, trapping about 2 Korean People's Army battalions still in the town. The 3rd Battalion of the 23rd Infantry made a swift 8-mile journey from the southeast into Hyeopcheon. In the afternoon, as Korean People's Army forces attempted to flee, the 38th Infantry's position managed to eliminate approximately 300 of them. Additionally, 2 F-51 fighter flights caught more fleeing Korean People's Army in the open, inflicting further casualties. The survivors scattered into the hills in chaos. On September 24th, the area around Hyeopcheon saw intense action as the 5th Air Force conducted 53 sorties, causing significant losses among the North Koreans. That night, the 1st Battalion of the 38th Infantry moved into Hyeopcheon from the north. The following morning, the 38th Infantry set off towards Kochang, finding the road blocked and having to proceed on foot. The Korean People's Army 2nd Division, in its haste, left behind all its heavy gear and vehicles between Hyeopcheon and Kochang. The 38th Infantry managed to capture significant resources and prisoners during this advance, with enemy remnants and their ill commander, Major General Cho Hyun, retreating into the mountains. Meanwhile, Air Force bombs and strafing runs left Kochang almost completely destroyed. After covering roughly 30 miles during the day, the 38th Infantry halted just a short distance from the town late that night. Entering Kochang the morning of September 26, the 38th Infantry found a North Korean field hospital with 45 wounded soldiers. Captured prisoners revealed plans for a gathering of forces from the Korean People's Army's 2nd, 4th, 9th, and 10th Divisions in Kochang, a plan thwarted by the rapid advance of the United States 2nd Division. The 23rd Infantry Regiment was originally tasked to follow a route south parallel to the 38th Infantry on their way to Kochang. However, after discovering that the intended road was either blocked or non-existent due to poor conditions revealed by air and road scouting, General Lawrence B. Kaiser, the commander of the 2nd Division, directed Colonel Paul L. Freeman, Jr. to lead the regiment north instead. Excluding its 1st Battalion and using their own transport, the regiment set out at 4 p.m. on September 25th. They fought off 3 separate enemy engagements and repaired 4 small bridges during a night march to Kochang, catching up with the 38th Infantry the next day in daylight. On the night of September 26, they pushed on another 14 miles to Anhui, arriving there by 7:30 p.m. without running into enemy forces. Anhui was surrounded by flooded rice paddies, leaving the regiment's vehicles to navigate the town's narrow street. Still, at least one hostile group was believed to be nearby. A devastating surprise attack hit the town at 4 a.m. on September 27, severely wounding Lieutenant Colonel R.G. Sherrard and killing or injuring several other officers and enlisted men. On that same day, the last organized enemy forces east of the Nakhtong River from the KPA 10th Division withdrew from Hill 409 near Hyeongpung, crossing the river before sunrise. The 9th Infantry Regiment's patrols entered Hyeongpung in the afternoon, and 2 of its companies secured Hill 409 without a fight. The following day, after being relieved by the 65th Regimental Combat Team of the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division, the 2nd Battalion, 9th Infantry, joined the rest of the 2nd Division across the river. Early on September 28, Colonel Peploe led the 38th Infantry, starting with the 2nd Battalion, on a motorized march from Kochang towards Cheonju, a journey of 73 miles across mountainous terrain. They arrived in just over 9 hours, engaging in a confrontation with about 300 enemy soldiers in Cheonju, resulting in numerous enemy casualties and prisoners. Their progress was momentarily halted due to a fuel shortage until a 2nd Division liaison plane relayed their situation, and fuel was quickly supplied. After refueling, the battalion moved on to Nonsan and reached Kangyong by the early hours of September 30th, without further encounters. Supplying these advances was a daunting task, with 9th Corps having limited truck resources to support the 25th and 2nd Divisions. By the time the 2nd Division reached Nonsan on September 29th, supply lines stretched over 200 miles from the railhead at Miryang, featuring rugged terrain and narrow roads, doubling the average resupply trip 48 hours. During a particularly grueling 105-hour period, truck drivers slept for barely 13 hours. By the end of September, the 2nd Division's units were spread out from the Kum River down south, highlighting the logistical challenges faced during these operations. On the right side of the United States 2nd Infantry Division, the British 27th Infantry Brigade, working with the United States 24th Infantry Division, was set to move towards Songju, while the 24th Division launched a simultaneous attack along the main highway towards Kumcheon, just north of their location. The British Brigade's mission was to hit the main highway about midway between the Nakhtong River and Kumcheon, following a route that had the brigade crossing path with the retreating North Korean People's Army's 10th Division. By the early hours of September 22nd, the brigade had crossed the Nakhtong River and was ready for action. At the break of dawn, the 1st Battalion of the Middlesex Regiment captured a small hill, nicknamed Plum Pudding Hill, located just 3 miles shy of Songju. They then took up the task of capturing a more significant position, known as Point 325 or Middlesex Hill, with assistance from United States tanks and their own firepower. They overcame the entrenched North Korean People's Army forces there as night fell. Meanwhile, the 1st Battalion, Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, targeted Hill 282, located to the left of the designated road. Their assault began before dawn on September 23rd, managing to catch a North Korean People's Army unit off guard during their breakfast and claiming the crest of Hill 282 after an hour's climb. However, a bigger threat loomed with the nearby, taller Hill 388, from which North Korean People's Army forces began to counterattack. The situation escalated through the morning as North Korean People's Army artillery and mortar fire intensified. When American artillery support unexpectedly ceased and terrain issues prevented United States tanks from engaging, the Argylls requested an airstrike on Hill 388. Around noon, 3 F-51s appeared, but tragically they targeted the wrong hill, striking the Argylls with napalm and gunfire after confusing their position for the enemies due to displayed white recognition panels on both hills. The devastating mistake left the hilltop engulfed in flames, forcing survivors to flee. Amidst this chaos, Major Kenneth Muir quickly organized a counterattack with around 30 men to reclaim a portion of the hilltop before North Korean People's Army forces could secure it. Despite his and Major A.I. Gordon Ingrain's efforts, including firing a 2-inch mortar, Muir was fatally wounded by enemy fire. The situation deteriorated, leaving Gordon Ingram with only a handful of capable men and dwindling ammunition. By 3 p.m., the survivors had retreated off the hill. The aftermath revealed 2 officers and 11 men killed, 4 officers and 70 men wounded, plus 2 missing, totaling 89 casualties. Sadly, about 60 of these were due to the mistaken airstrike. On the night in question, the 1st Battalion of the 19th Infantry Regiment launched an attack from Pusangdong, moving southward along the Waegwan-Kumcheon Highway, and successfully took control of Songju by 2 a.m. on September 24th. After capturing Songju, they proceeded to join forces with the British 27th Brigade, positioned just south of the town. Over the following 2 days, both the 19th Infantry and the British Brigade conducted thorough cleanup operations in the Songju region. By the afternoon of September 25th, the British Brigade was no longer under the command of the U.S. 24th Division and returned to the oversight of the 1st Corps. Facing a critical shortage of ammunition and fuel, the North Korean People's Army's 10th Division retreated from the Songju area on the 24th and 25th after hiding their artillery. A division surgeon captured during the operation estimated that the 10th Division had dwindled to about 25% of its initial strength. Around this time, the North Korean 1st Corps ordered its units south of Waegwon to pull back towards the north. Meanwhile, on September 23rd, the U.S. 24th Division initiated an offensive northwest along the Daejeon-Seoul Highway. This operation was strategically planned by General John H. Church, who arranged his forces in a way that allowed fresh regiments to periodically lead the attack, ensuring momentum was maintained. The first to move forward was the 21st Infantry Regiment, aiming to reach Inchon, the headquarters of the North Korean Army. However, they encountered resistance from the North Korean 105th Armored Division, which employed tanks, anti-tank guns, and minefields strategically placed in camouflage. During the late hours of that day, a significant tank battle unfolded, resulting in the loss of 4 U.S. M46 Patton tanks to enemy fire. Despite these losses, the U.S. forces managed to destroy 3 North Korean tanks. At the same time, a supply crisis loomed as North Korean artillery had destroyed vital river crossing tools, severely hampering the transportation of supplies. Despite this, local Koreans assisted by carrying supplies across the river at night. Just after midnight, moving into September 24th, the 5th Regimental Combat Team took the forefront from the 21st Infantry, but was halted by North Korean forces near Kumcheon. The North Koreans executed a strategic delay, allowing numerous units to retreat. As the U.S. forces pushed ahead, they faced stiff resistance, but eventually made significant gains, including destroying several North Korean tanks and nearly decimating the 849th Independent Anti-Tank Regiment. The conflict saw about 100 U.S. forces killed or wounded, mainly from tank and mortar fire. Following these intense engagements, the 21st Infantry coordinated with the 5th Regimental Combat Team in a dual assault on Kumcheon. By the afternoon of the next day, the town was secured, now in ruins from the heavy bombardment it had endured. That evening, the 21st Infantry pressed westward, maintaining focus on clearing the highway, which was essential for their advance. With Kumcheon under U.S. control by September 25th, North Korean resistance significantly weakened, indicating their primary aim was flee. On September 26th, the 19th Infantry took the lead in their division's operations, and their 2nd Battalion moved into Yeongdong without facing any resistance, where they freed 3 American prisoners from the town jail. Continuing their mission, they reached Okcheon, which is 10 miles east of Daejeon, in the early hours of September 27th. They stopped briefly to refuel tanks and allow the soldiers to rest. Resuming at 5:30 a.m., their advancement was halted when the lead tank hit a mine and was destroyed by North Korean People's Army anti-tank fire. Despite deploying the 1st Battalion for an attack, they could only make a little headway. The North Korean People's Army was significantly fortified on the heights west of Okcheon, aiming to delay the operations as they did 3 days before at Kumcheon, this time to facilitate the retreat of a large number of their forces from Daejeon. The battle revealed Daejeon as a major point for the regrouping of retreating North Korean People's Army units. Throughout the day, 300 prisoners from 7 different North Korean People's Army divisions were captured. The reports on the number of North Korean People's Army tanks destroyed near Daejeon were inconsistent, with ground forces reporting 13 tanks destroyed, and the Air Force claiming 20 tanks destroyed, and another 8 damaged. By 7 a.m. on September 28th, following an airstrike on a North Korean People's Army blocking position, the obstacles reduced, and it was discovered that the North Korean People's Army had withdrawn overnight. Aerial reconnaissance showed about 800 North Korean People's Army troops leaving Daejeon. Later, more troops were spotted assembling at the railway station and moving towards Chochiwon. The Air Force then targeted another group of 1,000 North Korean People's Army soldiers west of the city. The 19th Infantry Scouts and Engineers entered the outskirts of Daejeon by the afternoon and secured the city after clearing the mines, marking a significant victory. On the same day, the 19th Infantry Regiment faced the challenge of counting the high number of North Korean People's Army stragglers captured. The capture of prisoners continued, with the 24th Division capturing 447 prisoners by September 30th. During this time, significant amounts of North Korean People's Army equipment were seized in Daejeon, including 4 U.S. howitzers and 50 new heavy machine guns. Meanwhile, in Chochiwon, the North Koreans destroyed their equipment to prevent it from being captured. U.S. forces had already advanced past Daejeon and Chochiwon to cut off the main highway further north, achieving their mission with Daejeon's capture. By September 29th, the 24th Division had moved its command post to Daejeon, focusing on protecting the Army's communication lines back to the Nakhtong River. The division's units were spread out over nearly 100 miles, with responsibilities detailed from safeguarding the Daejeon area up to the Kum River, extending from Daejeon to Yeongdong, securing the Kumcheon area, and protecting the Waegwon bridges. Originally, the 8th Army's plan called for the 1st Cavalry Division to cross the Nakhtong River at Waegwon and then head toward Kumcheon and Daejeon, following closely behind the 24th Division. But as things got moving, I Corps, led by General Frank W. Milburn, switched things up. The new strategy was for the 1st Cavalry Division to make their river crossing at a location above Waegwon. Their mission was to move east of the 24th Division, following a roughly parallel path, and then take control of Sangju. General Milburn gave General Hobart R. Gay the freedom to choose the exact crossing point. General Gay, along with Colonel Holmes and Colonel Hawley from the 8th Engineer Combat Battalion, suggested crossing at Nakhtong Ni, where they knew a submerged bridge existed, but this idea was rejected. Instead, after scouting from above in a light aircraft, the ferry site at Sonsan was picked as the crossing point. As the 1st Cavalry Division got ready to move, they were up against 2 retreating North Korean People's Army divisions near Sangju. The KPA's 3rd Division was notably weakened, with only 1,800 men making it to Sangju. The other division, the 13th, was in chaos around Tabu-dong and northward along the road to Sangju. On the morning of September 21st, Colonel Lee Hak-hoo, a high-ranking officer of the 13th Division, gave himself up to the 8th Cavalry Regiment. Lee, who had slipped away from his group and approached the American forces alone, was the most senior North Korean prisoner captured up to that time, and he kept that status for the rest of the war. Before his capture, Lee played a significant role in the KPA as the operations officer of the 2nd Corps. Colonel Lee provided critical information about the KPA's situation. He revealed that his division was ordered to defend just days before, unaware of the Inchon landing. He detailed the dire state of the 13th Division. It had around 1,500 fighters left, was no longer combat ready, had lost its structure, and was fleeing the area in disorder. According to Lee, communication had broken down within the division, leading to disarray and retreat towards Sangju. Additional captures confirmed Lee's account, painting a grim picture of the division's condition, including the significant use of South Korean conscripts, the destruction of all tanks, severely reduced artillery capabilities, dwindling supplies, and a sharp decrease in food rations. Before General Lee surrendered, Gay had already put Lieutenant Colonel William A. Harris of the 7th Cavalry Regiment in charge of leading the chase for the 1st Cavalry Division. By then, Harris's regiment had grown with a 2nd Battalion taking over from the British 27th Brigade along the Nakhtong River. He formed a group called Task Force 777, with the 777 symbolizing its 3 main components: the 7th Cavalry Regiment, the 77th Field Artillery Battalion, and the 70th Tank Battalion. Leading the charge was Lieutenant Colonel James H. Lynch's 3rd Battalion, nicknamed Task Force Lynch. Along with Lynch's battalion, the task force included a mix of engineers, tank platoons, artillery units, a heavy mortar team, a reconnaissance platoon, and air control support. On the morning of September 22nd, right after assisting in repelling a North Korean People's Army attack near Tabu-dong, Task Force Lynch set off from just west of the town. Leading with tanks, they pushed past small groups of North Korean People's Army fighters. Their advancement was momentarily halted by a surprise anti-tank attack near Nakseong-dong, but quickly resumed after Gay sent in more tanks to overpower the enemy positions. The group faced a brief but intense encounter with North Korean People's Army forces hiding in a culvert, but managed to continue. Although originally aiming for a different crossing point, a note from a liaison plane redirected them north to Nakhtong Ni. They arrived at their new destination by late afternoon, and after some delay and reassurance of their orders, moved out under a bright moonlight. The path to Nakhtong Ni was marked by burning villages and eventually led them to a significant enemy presence attempting to escape across the river. A lucky shot illuminated the scene, revealing a disarray of abandoned North Korean People's Army vehicles and equipment. In the ensuing chaos, Task Force Lynch managed to neutralize around 200 North Korean People's Army soldiers in the water and seize important military assets, including tanks and trucks with traces of United States markings. The captured equipment pointed to the presence of units mainly from the North Korean People's Army's 3rd Division, along with soldiers from the 1st and 13th Divisions. Before dawn the next day, infantry units began their river crossing under challenging conditions, eventually taking control of the far bank. In just under a day since leaving Tabudong, Task Force Lynch advanced 36 miles, capturing valuable hardware, securing a critical crossing over the Naktong River, and significantly impacting enemy forces. On the 23rd, Major William O. Witherspoon, Jr. took his 1st Battalion across the river, making their way 10 miles northwest to the city of Sangju, which they found deserted. At the same time, engineer troops secured a ferry and a raft up and running at Naktong Ni, large enough for trucks and tanks across the river. By the 24th, they had 400 Korean workers enhancing what remained of an old North Korean bridge under the water. Tanks had crossed the river before noon and quickly moved to meet up with the task force in Sangju. Once the tanks were there, Harris assigned Captain John R. Flynn with K Company of the 7th Cavalry, along with a platoon of tanks, to push 30 miles up the road to Pown, reaching it before the evening. Harris had strict orders only to gather his regiment at Pown and not to venture further. On that same day, the 24th, Gay sent a team of tanks and infantry from Sangju towards Inchon, aiming to assist the 24th Division in their intense battle on the main highway connecting Waigwan, Daejeon, and Seoul. However, this maneuver took them outside of their assigned zone, leading I Corps to command a withdrawal, despite them successfully linking up with the 24th Division. From the 24th to the 25th of September, Gay focused on rallying the 1st Cavalry Division in the Sangju-Naktong-Ni region, while the frontrunner, the 7th Cavalry, secured Pown. On the evening of the 25th, Gay received a strict radio message from I Corps blocking any further advance. Frustrated and seeking clarification amidst what he perceived as mixed orders from Walker, Gay couldn't get a radio response, but managed to send out a liaison plane to reach the 8th Army headquarters. His request? Clear guidance and permission to continue pushing forward to meet X Corps near Suwon. By evening, they had set up telephone lines at Gay's forward base near the river crossing. Just before midnight, Walker's approval came through, green-lighting the division's push to link up with X Corps. The very next morning, September 26th, Gay gathered his commanders in a Sangju school to announce their march towards Suwon, starting at noon. Leading this charge would be the 7th Cavalry Regiment, spearheading through Pown, Cheongju, Cheonan, and Osan, with the division's main forces and artillery following. Their plan entailed the 8th Cavalry moving towards Ansong via Khoisan, and the 5th Cavalry breaking their current assault to become the rear guard, eventually pausing at Chochiwon and Cheonan to block any enemy movements and wait for further instructions. To their right, the Republic of Korea 1st Division, under the U.S. Works Corps and the only Republic of Korea unit within the 8th Army, had moved through Tabudong heading for the Naktong's Sansan Ferry on September 22nd. By the 25th, they crossed the river, moving north to take over from the 1st Cavalry Division near Hamchang and Pown above Sangju, freeing the division for further pursuits. Following Gay's orders, Harris directed Lynch at Pown to lead his force northwest as swiftly as possible to join up with X Corps troops near Suwon. This task force mirrored that of the earlier movement from Tabudong, albeit with a smaller artillery presence. Lynch's group faced no enemy resistance as they moved, only cheers from local South Koreans, eventually reaching Ipchang-ni, where they had to halt due to running out of gas. The refuel truck had missed linking up with them. However, after a brief encounter with Korean People's Army trucks that mistakenly drove close to the American forces, they managed to scavenge enough fuel to continue, resuming their mission around 8 p.m. Harris gave the go-ahead to Lynch, letting him decide to keep driving even as it was getting dark, with the vehicle lights turned on. This time, they wanted Baker's platoon of tanks to take the lead instead of the intelligence and reconnaissance platoon, and another group of 3 tanks to cover the back. Lynch even said Baker could fire at North Korean soldiers if he felt it was necessary. At 8:30 in the evening, their task force hit the main highway to Seoul just below Cheonan and noticed they were catching up to North Korean People's Army soldiers who seemed to be everywhere in Cheonan. At one point, Baker asked a North Korean People's Army guard the way to Osan, received a nod, but then the soldier realized Baker was American and took off. Despite that, the task force moved through Cheonan without anyone stopping them. North Korean soldiers just watched as they passed. After leaving Cheonan, Baker's tanks encountered about a company of North Korean People's Army soldiers marching and opened fire. They also encountered various North Korean People's Army military presence along the way. Eventually, the three lead tanks started pulling ahead, and Lynch couldn't slow them down over the radio. To adapt, he reinforced the front with infantry and a bazooka team-equipped trucks, one mounted with a .50 caliber machine gun. As they pushed forward, skirmishes with small enemy groups grew more frequent. About 10 miles south of Osan, the sound of heavy warfare reached the task force, prompting Lynch to order the lights off. By this time, Baker's tanks had a considerable lead and charged into Osan. Noticing T-34 tank tracks, Baker anticipated encountering North Korean armor. Upon leaving Osan, Baker ran into North Korean People's Army fire and then mistakenly came under fire from American forces who mistook his tank for enemy units due to their speed and their headlights. An anti-tank round took out a machine gun and killed a crew member. Thankfully, a white phosphorus grenade revealed a friendly tank's markings just in time to prevent further friendly fire. It was close to 10:26 in the evening on September 26th, marking a 106-mile journey from Pounds since 11:30 that morning. Baker's miraculous survival owed to several factors: mistakenly passing through a North Korean People's Army tank unit, navigating through enemy and friendly lines without major losses, and the preemptive removal of mines by the 31st Infantry, anticipating an attack. Earlier that day, MacArthur's headquarters had issued a warning to be cautious of friendly units entering the zone, preventing potential friendly fire. Meanwhile, higher-ranking officers met at Suwon Airfield to discuss operational movements, noting the expected merging of different divisions within 36 hours. Despite attempts, Baker and the frontline crews couldn't establish radio contact with the rest of Task Force Lynch. In a gripping episode during the Korean War, Task Force Lynch found itself in a harrowing situation not too far from Osan. While they were trailing behind their leader, Baker, by about an hour, they made the tactical choice to turn off their vehicle lights and proceed in darkness about 10 miles south of Osan. Near the village of Habong-ni, around midnight, they had a chilling encounter. Lynch spotted a T-34 tank lying seemingly inactive off the road and mentioned to Captain Webble, who was with him, that it looked like the Air Force had taken it out. Many in the column noticed the tank, but to their horror, it suddenly sprang to life, firing with both cannon and machine gun. To add to the surprise, a second tank joined in the attack. Reacting swiftly, the column stopped, and everyone sought cover. Lieutenant John G. Hill Jr. courageously went forward to fetch their rocket launcher team. This team managed to destroy one of the T-34s, but the other one began a destructive run down the road, crushing vehicles under its tracks and continuing its assault from a nearby rice paddy, even after being hit by a 75mm recoilless rifle shell. The drama escalated when Webel attempted a daring move to disable it with a grenade, a plan thwarted when the tank suddenly moved, nearly catching him in the process. Undeterred, Webel improvised with a 5-gallon can of gasoline, managing to set the tank ablaze, although this bold act left him with minor burns and broken ribs. The situation intensified when more enemy tanks approached. Lynch and his men prepared for the worst, setting up a makeshift roadblock. The confrontation turned into a fierce battle when a voice from one of the approaching tanks called out in Korean, leading to an immediate exchange of fire. 3 American tanks joined the fray, making a valiant stand against 8 more T-34s that arrived to reinforce the attackers. Despite a fierce fight, the U.S. forces managed to immobilize 2 of the enemy tanks thanks to Webel's adept handling of a bazooka, another tool in their desperate fight against overwhelming odds. Sergeant Willard H. Hopkins emerged as a hero in the chaos, taking daring actions that led to the neutralization of several enemy tanks. Sadly, in the midst of his brave efforts, he was killed. The battle, marked by personal acts of courage and desperation, resulted in the destruction of 7 out of 10 attacking enemy tanks, with Task Force Lynch suffering the heartbreaking loss of 2 men killed and 28 wounded, in addition to losing 2 tanks and 15 other vehicles. After the tumultuous night, the task force regrouped at dawn, pressed forward, and encountered more enemy forces, including a hostile tank and machine gun position, which they decisively overcame. Their relentless advance led them to Osan by 8 o'clock in the morning, marking the end of a night filled with fierce combat and unwavering bravery. On the morning of September 27th, just north of Osan in Korea, Task Force 777, an H Company from the 31st Infantry Regiment, part of the 7th Division, made contact at 0826. Despite this connection being established, Task Force 777 didn't directly join the 31st Infantry's assault on the North Korean forces in the hills north of Osan. Nevertheless, their communication, including forward air controllers and medical units, was a significant support to the 31st Infantry during the battle. Before midday, upon arriving at Osan and witnessing the ongoing battle to the north, Gay met with a battalion commander from the 31st Infantry. He proposed supporting the fight by using the 8th Cavalry Regiment to encircle the enemy, offering additional support from the 77th and 99th Field Artillery Battalions and a tank company. The battalion commander responded that he would need approval from higher up. Meanwhile, other units from the 1st Cavalry Division waited nearby and did not engage in the battle, which continued until the afternoon of September 28th. It's noted that General David G. Barr of the 7th Infantry Division said he was not informed of Gay's offer to assist. In a swift move towards Osan, the 1st Cavalry Division had earlier isolated segments of the North Korean 105th Armored Division near Ansong and Pyeongtaek, as well as various units near Daejeon. On September 28, with the help of fighter bombers, forces including C Company of the 70th Tank Battalion and K Company of the 7th Cavalry managed to destroy at least 7 North Korean T-34 tanks out of 10 in the Pyeongtaek area, 5 thanks to airstrikes. The 16th Reconnaissance Company narrowly avoided being overwhelmed by these tanks, though they did experience casualties. Furthermore, on September 29th, L Company of the 5th Cavalry Regiment ambushed around 50 North Korean soldiers in 9 jeeps near Daejeon as they were heading north. In the east, the troops from the Republic of Korea made impressive advances from Daegu, outpacing and in some cases moving further ahead than the 8th Army. What's notable is that the Republic of Korea Army managed this on foot as they were not equipped with motor vehicles like the 8th Army. Particularly, the Republic of Korea II Corps, with its 6th and 8th Divisions, pushed forward approximately 16 miles on September 24th. The 6th Division moved into Hamcheong on the night of September 25th and tackled the challenging Sobak Mountains terrain by September 27th, making their way to Cheongju. By September 30th, this division encountered resistance from Korean People's Army forces near Wonju. The Republic of Korea's 8th Division also made quick progress, reaching Andong right before midnight on September 24th. Despite a demolished bridge and retreating North Korean forces, the 8th Division pressed on, securing Andong by September 26 after overcoming extensive minefields. This division continued to move quickly, reaching Yechon and then toward the Upper Han River, encountering strong Korean People's Army resistance near Chechon at the end of September. The Republic of Korea Capital Division wasn't far behind. By September 27th, it had reached Chunyang and continued advancing through difficult mountainous terrain. On the night of October 1st to 2nd, a large Korean People's Army force, previously bypassed, attacked aggressively, targeting the Republic of Korea II Corps headquarters in Wonju, resulting in significant losses, including civilian casualties estimated between 1,000 and 2,000. Along the east coast, the Republic of Korea 3rd Division, supported by heavy U.S. naval gunfire, captured Yongdok on September 25th, finding the town ablaze and the enemy seemingly caught off guard. The fall of Yongdok had North Korean forces scrambling, with some attempting to flee into the mountains. The Republic of Korea 3rd Division, led by Major Curtis J. Ivey and supported by Colonel McPhail from the Korean Military Advisory Group, pursued the enemy northward, making swift advances and even capturing Samchok by September 29, moving closer to the 38th parallel. General Walker, impressed by the South Korean Army's performance, praised their efforts in turning the war situation from defensive to offensive. The dedication and strategic movements of the Republic of Korea units, especially along the coastal road and through the challenging terrains of the east, underscored their critical role in the conflict. Towards the end of September, there was a notable shift in North Korea's military activity. A lot of their units started disappearing or avoiding combat. On September 24th, for example, some fighter pilots couldn't find any enemy targets and had to return to their bases without engaging in any combat. The fighting force of North Korea, once formidable, was now either fleeing or hiding, and were essentially disorganized, and morale was low. A particularly telling incident happened on October 1st, when a United States Air Force T-6 Mosquito pilot, managing air control, convinced 200 North Korean soldiers near Kunsan to surrender by simply dropping them a note. They followed his instructions, gathering on a hill to be taken prisoner by United Nations forces that the pilot had directed to the location. This event demonstrated the deep demoralization within the North Korean rank. In response to this collapsing enemy force, General MacArthur, on October 1st, decided to halt further bombings and destruction of transportation and communication infrastructures in areas south of the 38th parallel, unless they were directly aiding North Korean military efforts. This directive also included suspending air attacks on strategic targets within North Korea itself. In the last week of September, the United Nations forces captured significant amounts of North Korean military equipment, including tank, artillery pieces, vehicles, and even trains filled with supplies, all abandoned as the North Korean forces retreated. The extent of the equipment left behind indicated the severe logistical struggles and demoralization faced by the North Korean military. In the period from September 26 to October 21st, following the United Nations advance from the Osan perimeter, detailed surveys showed a vast number of North Korean tanks and guns were destroyed or abandoned. This included 239 T-34 tanks and numerous self-propelled guns. Interestingly, a good portion of these losses were due to airstrikes and napalm, though it's believed some tanks initially immobilized by infantry weapons like bazookas were later destroyed in air attack. The surveys also revealed a large number of United States tanks lost, primarily to mine explosions, a significantly higher rate than experienced during World War II. Throughout the breakout from the Osan perimeter, the United Nations captured a remarkable number of prisoners, with numbers swelling rapidly as North Korean forces struggled to retreat. Additionally, many North Korean troops and officials sought refuge in mountainous areas still within South Korea, eluding United Nations forces temporarily. By early October, despite efforts to block United Nations advances, North Korean forces, including sizable groups and high-ranking officers, were on the run, leaving behind more heavy weaponry as they tried to escape into the north. These desperate actions and the substantial losses of equipment and personnel highlight the significant setbacks faced by North Korean forces during this critical period. At the end of September, reports from North Korean sources revealed the state of the Korean People's Army. The 6th Division initially withdrew in an orderly fashion, but many of its troops eventually dispersed, with only some making it back to North Korea. The 7th Division saw its commander killed near Inchon as it retreated, with its remains gathering in the Inje-Yanggu area above the 38th parallel by mid-October. Major General Cho Hyun of the 2nd Division had a mere 200 soldiers with him by the end of September, with other members of the division scattered. The 9th and 10th Divisions, having retreated through Taejeon, ended up taking different routes when they found Taejeon had fallen. A small number from the 105th Armored Division made it back to North Korea. The Korean People's Army I Corps commander dissolved his command during the retreat and fled with some officers to the Taebaek Mountains around September 27th. From near Daegu, 1,000 to 1,800 soldiers from the 3rd Division reached Pyongyang at the start of October, and about 2,000 from the 1st Division regrouped by the end of October after retreating through Wonju and Inje. The 13th Division faced devastating losses, with many high-ranking officers taken prisoner. August saw the 13th Division's artillery commander surrender, followed by a number of other high-ranking officers, including Colonel Lee Hak-koo and a 26-year-old regimental commander, Colonel Moon Chae-won, who surrendered after hiding for nearly a week. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Bong-hun of the 19th Regiment led 167 men to surrender at a police station in Subi-myeon after being blocked by Republic of Korea troops. A few members of the division managed to reach the Pyongyang area. Meanwhile, remnants of the 8th Division and about 3,000 to 3,500 men from the 12th Division, after gathering stragglers, made their way to areas close to the 38th parallel and beyond. Small elements of the 15th Division and remnants of the 5th Division also managed to infiltrate northward. The majority of Korean People's Army troops who escaped from the Osan perimeter gathered in the Iron Triangle and the Hwacheon-inje area of east-central North Korea above the 38th parallel. On October 2nd, a United States Air Force pilot spotted an estimated 5,000 Korean People's Army soldiers moving in small groups north of the 38th parallel between Hwacheon and Kumhwa. The Korean People's Army II Corps commander and his staff, as well as the commanding generals and staff of the Korean People's Army Army Front Headquarters at Kumcheon, managed to escape to the Iron Triangle. From there, they directed guerrilla operations against United Nations forces. Estimates indicate that between 25,000 to 30,000 North Korean soldiers in a disorganized state were able to reach North Korea from the Osan perimeter. Essentially, this meant the Korean People's Army was decimated for all intents and purposes. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.